Welcome to Sunday Politics South. My name's Peter Henley. Coming up in the next 20 minutes, the government's been handing £10 million to help councils revitalise the country's high streets. We meet the local businessman who's got his own plan to reopen the shops in his town. More on that in a moment. First, let's meet the two politicians who'll be with me for today's programme. Antonia Bance is a Labour councillor on Oxford City Council, and Conor Burns is the Conservative MP for Bournemouth West, and until this Tuesday also PPS to the Northern Ireland Secretary. You were born in Belfast. You like that job. You must have felt very strongly to have resigned.
I did feel very strongly. I wrestled with it. I thought about it a lot. But I decided that on a point of principle I could not support the bill that was before Parliament on Tuesday. And in those circumstances I felt the only right thing for me to do was to step down from that job and vote against the government.
So is Lord's reform dead?
I think Lord's reform is in very big trouble. There is a consensus for Lord's reform. Unfortunately, Nick Clegg's bill proposes Lord's abolition. There is a consensus for reform, but not for what type of reform. So I can't see this bill making progress in the autumn.
Antonia Bance, Labour voting there against the programme motion, as we heard Yvette Cooper saying that, but it must seem to a lot of people like it's playing games with what's happening in Parliament.
Well, I think this is a really big proposal and it deserves the right amount of time to talk it through. We're all clear that something needs to happen about Lord's reform. It was in the Labour manifesto, the Lib Dem manifesto and the Conservative manifesto. It's just a matter of what and making sure we get it right.
So, are we going to go back to it then, do you think, Conor, or is there going to have to be some sort of fudge, no one last heave?
Well, I don't think that the Parliamentary Conservative Party can let this bill go through. And I think it's so fundamental. We're prepared to wear quite a lot of things to keep the coalition on track, but major constitutional change that would outlast the coalition for decades ahead is not something we're prepared to wear.
There's a lot of people in the Labour Party who'd like to see reform. Would you like to see Lord's reform yourself?
I think we'd all like to see Lord's reform.
So why did you vote against it? Why?
Well, Yvette was very clear. We didn't think that the timetable allowed for the right sort of discussion, the right sort of amendments and the right sort of views to be taken into account. We'll be there when it comes back. We voted for the second reading and we're very clear on our position.
Conor, do you think that there will be people who could be peeled away during the summer?
No, I think if anything the numbers will grow. There were a large number of colleagues who abstained rather than vote against. Consider this, 91 people in the Conservative side voted against the government on second reading with the knowledge that the Labour Party was supporting the government on second reading and we had absolutely no chance of stopping the bill at that point. That was the depth of feeling. That feeling is very strong. A lot of people agree with what the Prime Minister said before the election, that Lord's reform was a very urgent issue for a third term. Given we haven't yet won a first term on our own, a third term's a long way off.
Okay, both of you, thanks for now. People in Southampton are about to see the first fruits of the localism bill when they get a referendum on a controversial proposed power station in the city. Only people in 2 of the city's wards will get a vote, and it won't be binding on anyone. So is the council actually going to get any answers for the money they're spending? The plans to bring wood by boat to Southampton docks to generate power have been controversial. Locals say the plant would be a blot on the landscape and the process is far from sustainable. Both Conservatives and Labour on the council have opposed the idea, but in November they'll test public opinion with a referendum alongside the vote for a police commissioner.
We're trying to engage with democracy, with people, to try and make voting more real for them on issues that matter to them. And we think this is, as a first off, a good chance to prototype that.
Some say it's a NIMBY's charter. Only 2 council wards, Millbrook and Fremantle, will get a vote. The developers, Helios, say the finished power station, like this one in Scotland, could provide power for the whole of Southampton and more. And the council admit the vote isn't binding on anyone.
We're trying to engage with people in democracy, and if this as a trial works, then we would certainly want to take it further.
But you were elected campaigning against this, and now you're going back and saying, well, let's see what everybody thinks. It sounds dodgy.
Well, nobody had a chance to have their personal say on these planning applications. It's a new application, it's only just been submitted. I'm personally still not convinced, but that's not the point. It gives the people in Millbrook and Fremantle the opportunity to be convinced or otherwise.
Here with me in the studio is Stephen Golden from the No Southampton Biomass Group. The public consultation ends in August. This is then going to be decided nationally as part of this infrastructure department system. It's a bit late to take this vote in November, isn't it?
I don't think it's a bit late at all. I mean, this is a long process. Even if their application's accepted, we're still talking about a 12-month process after this. So this could actually form a very strong argument for local objection to this power plant.
But only 2 wards voting on it is just going to be a NIMBY's charter.
I can see that, and some within our group actually would like to see it extended across Southampton. Obviously, we're also mindful of the cost. I know when it was initially investigated, it was only going to cost £5,000. We have found out since it could cost up to £45,000 to hold this referendum. So,
even though it's combined with the police commissioner vote?
I believe the latest thing is it might not allow to be run in conjunction. That is something that the council are looking into at the moment.
Right, so this is already hitting some issues. Could it muddy the water for your campaign just to stop the station being built?
Obviously, it couldn't muddy the water, but, you know, one of the other alternative suggestions we've had is the council actually setting up a fighting fund to support the residents with professional advice and legal support to actually fight this, as the whole council is unified with the residents against this proposal.
But if it were drawn across a wider area, say, I mean, that would cost more in itself. Yeah. There are some within your group, I think, who'd rather see the whole of Southampton vote on this, because it would supply electricity to the whole of Southampton.
Well, as I say, some within our group would like to see the whole of the country debate on this, because, you know, that's what we are talking about, is our energy future and our energy sustainability. And this isn't just about a local argument.
Well, you wouldn't have the whole country debate about Southampton, one station in Southampton.
No, you wouldn't. But, again, it should be something on the national agenda, though, for what are we doing with energy. And this is where, as No Southampton Biomass Group, yes, we are opposed to this plant and we are fighting it locally, but we're also saying national policy towards large-scale import-based biomass is not the way forward, in our opinion.
We'll come to some of the environmental arguments in a moment. But let's just ask our 2 guests over here. On the issue of the referendum, first of all, Antonia, do you think it's a good idea to consult people in this way, maybe at the same time as another vote?
Well, absolutely it's a good idea. I'm really pleased that the new Labour administration in Southampton have taken this step of making sure local people can have their views heard, and that feeds in to the national process of decision making. This isn't...
Well, it's just 2 wards in Southampton. As Stephen says, really the debate should be about what sort of power do we need in the country as a whole.
Absolutely it should, but what we need to remember is we've got a new planning system that hasn't been tested yet. Who knows what considerations the Secretary of State or those making the decision will want to take into account. I think it's a really good idea that we have this sort of mass participation.
It's part of the localism bill, Conor, but doesn't this highlight some of the issues around it? You've got some people saying it should be just these 2 wards, and perhaps they're going to be opposed to it because it's on their doorstep, or perhaps it should be the wider Southampton, or, well, who actually decides on whether something should be built or not?
I think you've got 2 competing things going on here. The first one is, as you rightly alluded to, what is Britain's energy policy? We are increasingly dependent upon enemies, real and aspirant, Russia and the Middle East, very dangerous, very unstable places for our energy. So we've got to diversify our energy supply, renewables, tidal, wind, all of these things. And then you're seeing the conflict between the localism bill but central decision-making. I'm encountering it in Bournemouth with the proposed wind farm off the coast of Dorset, where local people are struggling to find a way of feeding into that process, and ultimately the decision is taken by the Secretary of State, but with no involvement between the local councils who are ultimately accountable to the people. So I think you're seeing those rubbing together, and this thing in Southampton is an example of that. I think a referendum that is for only 2 wards, and I know Southampton very well from my time on the council here.
Millbrook and Fremantle.
Just 2 wards in the area that is directly affected by it. I'm not sure it's going to give a proper reading of public opinion. I think there should be a wider debate about it. And there should also be a debate about the merits or demerits of biomass itself. The fact that all the chippings that will come in by boat into the port, hence the location close to the port. There's a big question about whether this is a sustainable form of energy at all.
But we're going to have to do something, or else the lights go out. And we've got to have some sort of renewables, haven't we?
We absolutely have. I think the opportunity that's been missed with this proposal is to think about whether there was a way that local residents could have been more brought into the scheme, perhaps through having that combined heat and power mechanism that would have provided low-cost energy to 10,000 homes in the immediate area.
OK, so if some of those ideas came up, would you drop your opposition to it, Stephen? I mean, you're not against renewables per se.
We're not against renewables. We actually feel this as a country is what we should be moving. However, again, I know we're saying this is a small part of Southampton. We're talking 20,000 people in the Millbrook and Fremantle wards. We had 7,000 voted in those wards in the local elections. You know, that's a massive amount of people. I think we're not talking about a street of 100, 200 people. Right. You know, this 20,000 people, if they all came out and voted and gave their opinion, that's a pretty strong message in my opinion.
OK, thank you very much for coming in and talking about it. The government is handing out £10 million to councils to help fill empty shops on our high streets. The shopping guru Mary Portas offering advice and money via the so-called Portas pilots. Clearly, it's time something got done about all those boarded up shops that we see every time we go into town. But, as Nicola Murray reports, one businessman in Havant is operating an almost one-man regeneration scheme.
Well, I've been over here for a year now. We actually bought the pet shop about a year ago. I say a pet shop is an empty shop. We put the pet shop in there. She's been trading successfully for a year. Then we look at this mobility shop. This shop was actually empty for 23 years.
Mark Smith has a bigger interest than most in his local high street.
So that's a nice haberdashery store.
He owns the hairdressers, cafe, funeral parlour and much more.
And in about 4 weeks' time, this will be the last shop opening for the time being until we get the old Netto store, and that's going to be a laundrette.
1 in 8 shops on high streets across the country are standing empty. Here in Lee Park, just outside Portsmouth, over a third have closed down. But now a local businessman has invested almost £1 million in the area. He's bought 12 shops, reduced the rents and filled them with tenants.
I saw potential. I bought reasonably low prices at the lower end, and I'm able to offer very good rents for new tenants. Lee Park has had a lot of money spent on it, regeneration, central government money, and it was voted one of the worst performing areas a year ago. And you know what, if it's at the bottom, surely there's only one way it can go.
Lee Park isn't the only area which has been struggling more than most to get shoppers back on its streets during the recession. Some town centres have been falling behind for years. While hundreds of thousands of people regularly flock to Gunwharf Quays, 18 shops are currently standing empty here on Gosport High Street. The Borough Council's just received £100,000 from the government's High Street Innovation Fund. The question now is how best to spend that money.
Well, all I can suggest is that they reduce the rent of the shops.
Revamp the high street, make it look better, get it all clean.
I don't know, I just shop online really. It's just easier.
Oh, have some nice shops rather than charity shops and gambling stops, and somewhere where we actually go and buy something nice.
The council hasn't quite decided how to spend the money yet, but it has been having meetings.
If, as a council, we can offer a holiday on business rates for, say, 3 months, and the landlord then allows a rent-free period for that 3 months, then it will make a difference to traders coming into the high street and filling up the empty shops. And that's one way that I think that the money can help.
Providing temporary relief is one thing, but critics say the government's decision to increase business rates for a second year running will cost retailers much more.
Central government sets business rates, and last April they put the total bill for UK retailing up by £350 million, which is a 5.6% increase. Obviously, various schemes that may in totality amount to £10 or £20 million are welcome, but they're really pretty insignificant set against that enormous extra burden.
Wishful thinking, perhaps, while the government's more interested in maintaining its income.
And we've got prime time video and game rental stall.
Mark Smith's investment in Lee Park is certainly an ambitious one, and you just can't help wanting him to succeed.
My aim is to have the other side of the high street. We've almost filled, we've got one empty shop on this side of the high street. My aim now is to start filling the other side of the high street where we've got about 5 empty retail units. Darwin said it's not the strongest species that survive, it's the species that was most adaptable to change. So I'm here and I'm actually changing the high street as I see it.
He may be a landlord, Mark Smith, there, but it's a bit of big society, isn't it, Antonia Pants? Isn't it just the sort of thing that's needed on the high street?
Well, absolutely. What we want to see is retailers, local entrepreneurs taking things into their own hands. But as we've seen around the country, high streets are struggling, and it's testament to this government's failure to get on top of reviving the economy.
Some might see it as a bit of papering over the cracks, I suppose. If you lower the rent, then you've less money going into the economy generally, and you're not actually making more money.
Absolutely, but I think it's the right thing for local councils to do that, to use what mechanisms they have at their disposal to try and make their local area better. I'd like to see it complemented by some national action as well. Ed Balls has set out a plan to cut VAT, and we know that that would help local retailers struggling high streets and put money in the pockets of ordinary families.
So, Conor Burns, you know, increasing business rates, as the guy there from the national retailers said, is for the second year running 6%, raising 350 million. Just putting 10 or 20 million back is a drop in the ocean compared to cutting business rates.
Peter, firstly, let's get a grip on saying that this government is responsible for the position on high streets in this country.
Let's not just go back and have the same argument again.
The empty shops problem has been accelerating over the last 20 years. There are a whole variety of reasons for it. There's the rise in online shopping, what the chap in your clip referred to. There's also the fact that we've had all these out-of-town centres that have been created with free parking. And councils, all councils of all colours, have reacted to dropping parking revenue by increasing further their charges and then further driving people away. We need to be innovative about this. So we, for example, have said to councils that if new businesses are started in their area, they can keep more of the business rates and decide locally how to spend that.
But you've put those business rates up 2 years running.
We have said to councils, if they have new businesses opening in their areas, they can keep locally the business rates and decide where to spend them, and they can then invest those back in to those local communities. That's a very radical thing.
That's a good local solution, Antonia Vance.
Well, we're absolutely in support of making sure that councils can keep more of the business rates in their area, as long as that's done fairly and in a way that supports all the different parts of our region on an equal basis.
Conor?
Well, it goes directly back into the local council's coffers and they can decide what to do with it. But yeah, let's be serious about this. Look at all the public opinion polls. The number one concern that people have in this country at the moment is the cost of living. The fact that there's been very little rise in incomes, the fact that household fuel has gone up, that petrol has gone up. There isn't an awful lot of money around, and part of this problem we're seeing on the high streets is a consequence of the recession and the economic situation that we're in, that we inherited from the previous government.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thank you. Now our regular roundup of the political week in the South, in 60 seconds. It's been a week for manufacturing. This year's Farnborough Air Show may be smaller, but it was given a flying start by the Prime Minister.
Every 2.5 seconds a plane takes off, powered by a Rolls-Royce engine. I think we just heard one a few moments ago.
Reading's shiny new station is starting to take shape, and it's clear the £850 million investment will transform the centre of the town. From planes and trains to automobiles. In Oxford, an extra £250 million investment in the mini plant by BMW has protected 5,500 UK jobs.
They've got a very good model now based on very high quality.
But in tough times, there are many still struggling. Gurkhas from Hampshire protesting at poverty pensions.
Who fought your wars in the Malaysian War or Second World War? There are few surviving with empty tummy.
And farmers, every drop of profit squeezed out of a pint of milk. They say prices have to rise. One thing that is very expensive are Olympic tickets. I don't know whether either of you tried to get tickets. Did you try?
I tried and I didn't get any tickets, so I'll be watching it on television with lots of other people.
Conor, did you try to get Olympic tickets?
I didn't try to get Olympic tickets, no.
Yeah. But the Olympic torch this week's caused a real buzz in Bournemouth. A lot of people are going to want to be going there, aren't they? And I understand some MPs are getting free tickets. Or do you think that's right, that these ones on the DCMS committee should be allowed to be given £450 worth of 100-metre final tickets?
Well, my own view is that politicians now need to be very, very careful in what they accept. I can only answer for myself. I wouldn't have accepted free tickets to go and see that. I think tickets should be given to those who have a genuine love and passion for sport and not given to people because of a position that they occupy in society.
You're very enthusiastic about the Olympics, Antonia. Would you have taken them?
I'm very enthusiastic about the Olympics, but I think it's right that politicians are ordinary people with an extraordinary job sometimes, and extra responsibilities. They should enter the ballot like everybody else.
And they're supervising BT, and it was BT who were paying for these tickets. So do you think there should be some sort of inquiry into this, as well as G4S? Conor?
I think that's a question you need to put to them. I personally wouldn't have taken the tickets.
OK, right. Both of you, I hope you enjoy the Olympics. It's our summer break coming up. It's politicians' summer break, and I think a lot of politicians could do with it at the moment, couldn't they? But you'll be watching it at home. Will you be going away or will you be watching?
I will be enjoying Bournemouth. One of the great things about the recess is the opportunity to get back to the constituency. A lot of people go on holiday to Bournemouth and I get the pleasure of working there.
OK, both of you, thank you. That's the Sunday Politics in the South. Thanks to my guests, Antonia Bantz and Conor Burns. Don't forget, over the summer recess, you can keep up with things on my blog. Now back to Andrew.